Have you ever felt like you were being watched over by something greater than yourself? Perhaps you've experienced those inexplicable moments when everything seems to fall into place just when you need it most, or when you've narrowly avoided danger in ways that defy logical explanation. Maybe you've found yourself wondering if there's more happening around us than what our eyes can see, more forces at work in the universe than what science has yet to discover or acknowledge. If these thoughts resonate with you, you're not alone. Across cultures, throughout history, and in the quiet corners of our own hearts, humanity has sensed the presence of beings that exist beyond the veil of our physical reality. We've called them by many names: angels, guardians, spiritual guides, divine messengers, but regardless of the terminology we use, the fundamental question remains the same. Are we truly alone in this vast universe, or is there an invisible world teeming with purpose and intention, working alongside us in ways we're only beginning to understand? For those of us who have felt the gentle nudge of intuition guiding us away from harm, who have experienced synchronicities too perfect to be mere coincidence, or who have found comfort in the belief that our departed loved ones continue to watch over us, these questions aren't merely philosophical curiosities. They represent a deep longing to understand our place in the cosmic order, to know that we matter, that we're protected, and that the struggles we face in our daily lives are witnessed and supported by forces beyond our comprehension. Yet, in our modern world, where scientific materialism often dismisses such experiences as wishful thinking or psychological phenomena, many of us find ourselves caught between what we've been taught to believe and what we intuitively know to be true. We live in an age where we can communicate instantly with someone on the other side of the planet, where we carry more computing power in our pockets than was used to send humans to the moon, and where we're beginning to understand that the universe is far stranger and more interconnected than our ancestors ever imagined. If we can accept that dark matter and quantum entanglement exist beyond our direct perception, why do we struggle to consider that conscious beings might also operate in dimensions beyond our immediate awareness? This internal conflict between skepticism and spiritual intuition creates a unique kind of loneliness. How many times have you hesitated to share an experience that felt profoundly meaningful to you, knowing that others might dismiss it as imagination or coincidence? How often have you wondered if the comfort you find in believing in angelic presence is simply a coping mechanism, a way to make sense of a chaotic world that often feels indifferent to our suffering? The truth is, these doubts are natural and even healthy. They reflect our desire for authentic understanding rather than blind faith. We don't want to believe in something simply because it makes us feel better. We want to believe because it reflects the deeper reality of how the universe actually operates. We yearn for evidence, for testimony, for accounts that ring true not just to our hearts but to our minds as well. This is where Edgar's revelations become so compelling and transformative. Unlike abstract theological discussions or New Age platitudes, Edgar's insights into the angelic realm offer specific, detailed accounts of how these invisible beings actually function in our world. His descriptions aren't vague or ethereal. They're practical, purposeful, and deeply relevant to the everyday challenges we all face. Through Edgar's extraordinary gift, we glimpse a reality where angels aren't distant, otherworldly beings who occasionally intervene in human affairs, but rather active participants in every moment of our existence. We discover that the invisible world isn't separate from our physical reality, but intimately woven through it, with conscious beings working tirelessly to guide, protect, and support us in ways we never imagined possible. But perhaps what makes Edgar's revelations most powerful is how they address the questions that keep us awake at night. When we lose someone we love, we desperately want to know if they're okay, if they can still hear us, if our connection transcends physical death. When we face difficult decisions, we long for guidance that goes beyond our limited human perspective. When we feel overwhelmed by the challenges of modern life, we need to know that we're not navigating this journey alone. Edgar's insights don't just confirm that angels exist, they reveal how they're working in our lives right now, in this very moment. They show us that the invisible world isn't some distant realm we might access after death, but a dimension of reality that interpenetrates every aspect of our current existence. The angels aren't waiting for us to earn their attention or prove our worthiness. They're already here, already engaged, already responding to our deepest needs and highest aspirations. This understanding has the power to transform not just how we view the spiritual realm, but how we approach our daily lives. When we recognize that we're surrounded by beings of light and love who are actively working on our behalf, our entire perspective shifts. Challenges become opportunities for growth rather than random misfortunes. Setbacks become redirections rather than defeats. The loneliness that so many of us carry begins to dissolve as we realize we're part of a vast network of support that extends far beyond what our physical senses can perceive. Yet even as we explore these profound truths together, questions naturally arise. How can we distinguish between genuine angelic communication and our own wishful thinking? What does it mean for our free will if angels are constantly influencing our circumstances? How do we develop the sensitivity to recognize their presence and guidance in our own lives? These are the questions that make this journey so rich and meaningful. This isn't about accepting someone else's truth blindly, but about discovering how these revelations might illuminate your own experiences and deepen your understanding of the mysterious forces that shape our lives. As we embark on this exploration together, I want you to know that this is more than just another spiritual discussion. This is an invitation to join a community of seekers who are committed to understanding the deeper realities of existence. By subscribing to this channel, you're not just accessing more content, you're becoming part of a growing family of individuals who refuse to accept that what we can see is all there is. Your presence here matters because every person who joins us brings their own unique perspective and experience, enriching our collective understanding of these profound mysteries. Together, we're building something beautiful, a space where questions are welcomed, experiences are honored, and the search for truth is approached with both open hearts and discerning minds. Your engagement, your comments, your willingness to share your own encounters with the invisible world helps create an environment where others feel safe to explore these life-changing truths. So as we prepare to dive deep into Edgar's revelations about what angels really do in the invisible world around us, I invite you to open yourself to possibilities that might challenge everything you thought you knew about reality. The journey we're about to take together has the power to heal the loneliness, answer the questions, and provide the guidance that your soul has been seeking. The invisible world is calling to you. The question is, are you ready to answer? There's something profoundly humbling about realizing you've never truly understood your place in the universe. I remember the first time this truth hit me, not as an abstract concept from a philosophy book, but as a living, breathing revelation that changed everything I thought I knew about existence itself. It was during one of those quiet moments that seem ordinary on the surface but carry the weight of eternity beneath them, when Edgar began to unveil the magnificent structure of the angelic realm that surrounds us every single day. You know that feeling when you're standing at the edge of the ocean, watching waves that began their journey thousands of miles away crash at your feet? That sense of being simultaneously significant and infinitesimal, connected yet humbled by forces far greater than yourself. That's exactly how I felt when I first began to comprehend the hierarchical tapestry of angelic beings that Edgar revealed. A cosmic organization so intricate and purposeful that it made me question everything I thought I understood about order, purpose, and my own role in this vast dance of existence. Perhaps you've experienced something similar in your own life. Those moments when you suddenly realize that what you thought was chaos was actually a symphony. What seemed like coincidence was actually orchestration. What felt like loneliness was actually the gentle presence of beings so devoted to your well-being that they organize their entire existence around supporting souls like yours. It's a revelation that can bring you to your knees with gratitude or overwhelm you with the magnitude of love that surrounds you at every moment. Edgar's descriptions of the angelic hierarchy aren't merely organizational charts for celestial beings. They're maps of how love itself structures reality. When he speaks of the guardian angels assigned to each human soul, he's not describing some bureaucratic assignment system, but rather revealing the most intimate truth of existence, that you matter so profoundly to the universe, that conscious beings of pure light dedicate their eternal existence to your growth, protection, and spiritual evolution. I've carried pain for so long, haven't you? That deep ache that comes from feeling forgotten by the universe, from believing that your struggles are yours alone to bear, from the crushing weight of thinking that if something goes wrong in your life, it's because you're not important enough to deserve protection or guidance. How many nights have you stared at the ceiling wondering if anyone truly sees you, truly understands the battles you fight in the quiet moments when the world isn't watching? But Edgar's revelations about guardian angels shatter this illusion of isolation so completely that it's almost difficult to believe at first. He describes beings whose entire existence revolves around knowing you more intimately than you know yourself, who witness every tear you've shed in solitude, who celebrate every small victory you've achieved when no one else noticed, who have been with you since before your first breath and will remain with you beyond your last. These guardian angels, according to Edgar's profound insights, aren't distant observers, but active participants in your daily existence. They're the whisper of intuition that made you take a different route home the day an accident blocked your usual path. They're the sudden inspiration that led you to call someone who desperately needed to hear from you. They're the gentle pressure in your chest that made you pause before saying something you would have regretted. The unexpected strength that carried you through your darkest hour when you thought you had nothing left to give. Yet as magnificent as this revelation is, it's only the beginning of the story. Edgar reveals that above these guardian angels exists a vast hierarchy of beings, each with their own sacred purpose, each playing their part in maintaining the delicate balance between the visible and invisible worlds. There are angels who oversee communities communities, angels who guide entire nations through periods of transformation, angels whose sole purpose is to inspire artists and musicians and writers to create beauty that lifts human consciousness toward the divine. And then there are the archangels, beings of such immense power and responsibility that they govern cosmic forces themselves. Edgar's descriptions of these magnificent entities go far beyond the Sunday school images many of us grew up with. These are beings who orchestrate the movements of galaxies, who maintain the very fabric of reality, who ensure that the laws of love and justice permeate every level of existence from the quantum to the cosmic. Learning about this hierarchy initially brought me a strange kind of grief, the same grief you might feel when you realize that your problems, which feel so overwhelming and all-consuming, are actually just tiny ripples in an ocean of consciousness so vast and purposeful that your mind can barely begin to grasp its scope. There's an ego death that happens when you truly comprehend your place in this cosmic order, a dissolution of the small self that has spent so much energy believing it must control and manage everything alone. But this grief, I discovered, is actually a doorway to the most profound freedom imaginable. When you truly understand that you're held within a structure of divine love so comprehensive that it extends from your personal guardian angel all the way up to archangelic beings who govern the movement of stars, something inside you finally relaxes. The burden you've been carrying, the pressure to figure everything out on your own, the exhausting effort of trying to force outcomes through sheer willpower, all of it can finally be set down. Edgar's revelations helped me understand that this hierarchy isn't a ladder we must climb or a judgment system that determines our worth, but rather a network of support so intricate and all-encompassing that every level is both serving and being served, supporting and being supported, loving and being loved. Your guardian angel is held by beings of greater power, who are themselves held by even greater beings, in an infinite chain of care that ultimately connects you directly to the source of all existence itself. This understanding transformed my relationship with struggle and suffering in ways I never expected. When you know that your pain is witnessed not just by your guardian angel, but by beings whose consciousness encompasses entire universes, when you realize that your growth matters not just to you, but to the cosmic order itself, your suffering begins to take on a different quality. It doesn't become pleasant, but it becomes purposeful. It doesn't become easy, but it becomes meaningful. Edgar describes how angels at every level of the hierarchy are constantly working together to orchestrate opportunities for human souls to evolve, to heal, to remember their divine nature. Sometimes this means your guardian angel coordinates with community angels to place you in situations where you'll meet exactly the person you need to meet. Sometimes it means archangelic forces shift global energies to create the conditions necessary for collective healing and awakening. What struck me most deeply about Edgar's descriptions is how this entire magnificent hierarchy exists in a state of joyful service. These beings aren't burdened by their responsibilities or resentful of their roles. They exist in a state of such pure love that serving others is their greatest joy, their highest fulfillment, their natural expression of their divine nature. They show us what we're capable of becoming when we align ourselves with love rather than fear, service rather than selfishness, trust rather than control. But perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of Edgar's revelations about angelic hierarchy is how it reframes our understanding of authority and power. In human systems, hierarchy often means that those at the top have more privileges and those at the bottom have fewer. But in the angelic realm, Edgar reveals, hierarchy means that those with greater power have greater opportunities to serve, greater responsibilities to love, greater capacities to support those who are learning and growing. This understanding began to heal something in me that I didn't even know was wounded. So much of my life had been shaped by painful experiences with human authority figures who used their power to dominate rather than serve, who created fear rather than safety, who demanded obedience rather than inspiring love. Learning about the true nature of divine authority through Edgar's revelations showed me what leadership could look like when it's rooted in love rather than ego, service rather than control, empowerment rather than diminishment. As I sit here sharing these reflections with you, I'm aware that you might be experiencing some of the same emotional waves that washed over me when I first encountered these truths. Perhaps there's a part of you that's relieved to know you're not alone, that the invisible support system around you is far more vast and loving than you ever dared imagine. Perhaps there's another part that's grieving the years you spent believing you had to carry everything by yourself, fighting battles you thought no one else could see or understand. Both of these responses are sacred and necessary. The relief opens your heart to receive the love that's always been available to you. The grief clears away the old stories and beliefs that kept you separated from this this love. Together they prepare you for the profound transformation that comes from truly knowing your place in the cosmic hierarchy of love. This isn't just information about angels. This is an invitation to step into your true role as a beloved participant in the greatest story ever told. A story where every character matters, every plot twist serves the ultimate good, and every ending leads to a new beginning that's more beautiful than anything you could have imagined on your own. You belong here, in this magnificent structure of divine love, not as an accident or an afterthought, but as an essential note in the symphony of existence itself. If these words resonate in the depths of your soul, if they're stirring something that's been sleeping within you, I invite you to join our growing community of seekers who are committed to exploring these profound truths together. By subscribing, you're not just accessing more content about the invisible world, you're becoming part of a family of souls who are learning to live in conscious connection with the angelic realm that surrounds and supports us all. Your presence here matters more than you know, because every heart that opens to these truths helps raise the consciousness of our entire human family, creating space for others to step into their own divine belonging. Sometimes I wonder if you've noticed them too, those impossibly perfect moments when the universe seems to conspire in your favor, when doors open just as you approach them, when the exact person you need to meet appears at precisely the right moment in your life. I used to dismiss these experiences as mere coincidence, the way we're taught to do in a world that prides itself on skepticism and rational explanations for everything. But there came a day when the weight of these so-called coincidences became too overwhelming to ignore, when the intricate tapestry of seemingly random events wove itself into a pattern so beautiful and purposeful that denying its divine orchestration felt like betraying my own soul. It was during one of the most challenging periods of my life, when I felt as though I was walking through a thick fog with no clear direction, that Edgar's revelations about daily angelic interventions began to illuminate the invisible hands that had been guiding me all along. Perhaps you've been in that same fog, feeling lost and abandoned, wondering if anyone notices your struggles or cares enough to help. That's exactly where I was when I first began to understand that every day of our lives, in ways both subtle and profound, angels are actively participating in our human experience, weaving miracles into the fabric of ordinary moments, until the ordinary becomes extraordinary, until the mundane becomes sacred. You know that feeling when you're running late for something important, and every traffic light seems to turn green just as you approach it, as if the entire city's infrastructure is somehow aligned with your needs? Or those moments when you're struggling with a difficult decision and you overhear a stranger's conversation that contains exactly the wisdom you needed to hear? I used to chalk these up to luck or selective attention, but Edgar's insights revealed something far more beautiful and intentional happening beneath the surface of these experiences. According to Edgar's profound understanding of the invisible realm, angels work tirelessly to orchestrate what we call synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that serve as breadcrumbs leading us along our highest path. But it's not just about the big, obvious interventions that we might recognize as miraculous. It's the countless micro-adjustments they make to reality every single day, the gentle nudges that redirect our steps, the whispered inspirations that guide our choices, the protective barriers they place around us that we never even know existed. I remember the day I finally understood this on a visceral level. I had been struggling with a toxic relationship that was slowly destroying my sense of self-worth, but I felt trapped by my own fear and codependency. Every day I would promise myself I would find the courage to leave, and every day I would find another excuse to stay. The pain was becoming unbearable, but the fear of the unknown felt even worse. That's when the interventions began, so subtle at first that I almost missed them entirely. It started with a book that literally fell off a shelf as I walked past it in a bookstore, landing open to a page about recognizing emotional abuse. Then a friend I hadn't spoken to in years called me out of the blue to tell me about her own journey of leaving an unhealthy relationship. Then my therapist, who had been gently suggesting I examine this relationship for months, suddenly had a cancellation and could see me twice in 1 week. Then the apartment I had been dreaming of but thought was out of my reach became available at exactly the rent I could afford. Edgar's teachings helped me recognize that none of these events were random. They were the result of angelic beings coordinating across multiple dimensions of reality to create the conditions necessary for my liberation. My guardian angel was working with other angels to place the right information in my path, to inspire the right people to reach out to me, to align circumstances in ways that would make my transition not just possible, but inevitable. But what struck me most deeply was realizing that this level of care and coordination wasn't unique to my situation. Edgar reveals that every human being receives this same quality of attention and support, that the invisible realm is constantly responding to our deepest needs and highest aspirations, even when we're not consciously aware of asking for help. The angels don't wait for us to pray or meditate or prove our worthiness. They're already there, already working, already loving us into our fullest potential. This understanding completely transformed my relationship with difficulty and challenge. Instead of seeing obstacles as evidence that I was alone or abandoned, I began to recognize them as invitations for angelic intervention. Every closed door became an opportunity for the universe to redirect me toward something better. Every disappointment became a chance for deeper wisdom to emerge. Every moment of confusion became a space for divine guidance to break through. Edgar describes how angels influence our reality through what he calls gentle persuasion, working within the laws of free will and natural consequence to create optimal conditions for our growth and well-being. They can't override our choices or eliminate all challenges from our lives because struggle and choice are essential components of our spiritual evolution, but they can ensure that we're never facing anything alone, that help is always available if we're willing to receive it, that even in our darkest moments we're surrounded by beings whose love for us is absolute and unwavering. Sometimes their interventions are so subtle that we barely notice them. The stranger who smiles at you on a day when you desperately needed kindness, the song that plays on the radio with lyrics that speak directly to your situation, the sudden inspiration to take a different route home that saves you from an accident you'll never know about, the inexplicable feeling of peace that washes over you during a panic attack, the word of encouragement that arrives through text message at the exact moment you're ready to give up. Other times their interventions are more dramatic, the kind that make you stop in your tracks and acknowledge that something beyond ordinary cause and effect is at work. Edgar shares stories of people being warned of danger through dreams, of impossible recoveries from terminal illnesses, of financial miracles that arrive just in time to prevent catastrophe, of meeting their soulmate through a series of events so unlikely that the mathematical probability approaches zero. What moves me most about Edgar's revelations is how they reveal the profound intimacy of angelic care. These beings know us better than we know ourselves. They understand our fears, our dreams, our patterns of self-sabotage, our deepest wounds, our highest potential. They know what kind of guidance we're most likely to recognize and accept. They know whether we need a gentle nudge or a dramatic wake-up call. They know when to protect us from consequences and when to allow us to experience them for the sake of our growth. This level of intimate knowledge and personalized care initially overwhelmed me with emotion. To think that I had spent so many years feeling invisible and forgotten when I was actually being tended to with such exquisite attention felt almost too good to be true. The grief of those years of perceived abandonment mixed with the joy of recognizing how loved I had always been, creating a bittersweet ache that took months to fully process. But gradually, this understanding began to heal the fundamental wound of separation that I didn't even know I was carrying. The deep loneliness that had shadowed me since childhood, the persistent sense that I had to figure everything out on my own, the exhausting hypervigilance that came from believing survival depended entirely on my own efforts, all of it began to soften in the light of this greater truth. Edgar's insights also helped me understand why some prayers seem to go unanswered, while others are fulfilled beyond our wildest dreams. Angels see the bigger picture that we can't perceive from our limited human perspective. Sometimes what we think we need would actually harm us or prevent us from receiving something even better. Sometimes the timing isn't right, or we need to develop certain qualities before we're ready to receive what we've asked for. Sometimes our request is being answered, but not in the way we expected. Learning to trust in this larger intelligence, to surrender my need to control outcomes and instead align myself with the flow of angelic guidance, has been one of the most challenging and liberating aspects of my spiritual journey. It requires a level of faith that goes against everything our culture teaches us about self-reliance and personal responsibility. It asks us to believe that we're held by love even when circumstances suggest otherwise, that we're being guided even when we feel completely lost, that we're never alone even in our most isolated moments. But as I've learned to live from this place of trust, miraculous things have continued to unfold in ways that still take my breath away. Opportunities appear that perfectly match my skills and interests. People enter my life who become instrumental in my growth and healing. Resources become available just when I need them. Solutions to problems reveal themselves in ways I never could have imagined. Life becomes less about forcing outcomes and more about recognizing and following the signs that are constantly being placed in my path. Edgar teaches that developing sensitivity to angelic interventions is like strengthening a muscle that most of us have never consciously exercised. The more we pay attention to the subtle guidance and synchronicities in our lives, the more we begin to recognize them. The more we acknowledge and express gratitude for these interventions, the more clearly we begin to perceive them. The more we trust in their presence, the more we open ourselves to receiving their gifts. This isn't about becoming passive or giving up personal responsibility for our lives. It's about learning to dance with forces greater than ourselves, to co-create with the invisible realm, rather than trying to manifest everything through sheer willpower alone. It's about recognizing that we're part of an infinitely intelligent system system that's always working for our highest good, even when we can't see how all the pieces fit together. As I share these reflections with you now, I wonder what interventions might already be at work in your own life that you haven't yet recognized. What doors have opened recently that you attributed to luck rather than love? What guidance have you received that you dismissed as your imagination rather than divine communication? What protection have you experienced that you took for granted rather than celebrating as miraculous? The angels are waiting for you to notice them, not because they need your recognition to validate their existence, but because your awareness creates a clearer channel for their love to flow into your life. Every moment you acknowledge their presence, every time you express gratitude for their guidance, every instance you trust in their protection, you're strengthening the connection between the visible and invisible worlds, making it easier for miracles to unfold in ways that will amaze and delight you. If this resonates with something deep inside you, if it's stirring a recognition of divine presence that's been quietly operating in your own life, I invite you to join our community of awakening souls who are learning to live in conscious partnership with the angelic realm. When you subscribe to this channel, you're not just accessing more insights about spiritual truth, you're declaring your readiness to participate more fully in the miraculous unfolding of your own blessed life, and your presence here creates space for others to recognize the angels who are waiting patiently to be seen in their lives as well. There's a moment in every profound awakening when you realize you can never go back to who you were before, when the veil has been pulled aside so completely that pretending you don't see what lies beyond becomes impossible. I'm sitting here now, trying to find words for the transformation that has unfolded within me since Edgar's revelations began illuminating the bridge between the visible and invisible worlds, and I'm struck by how inadequate language feels when attempting to capture something so fundamentally life-altering. You know that feeling when you've been living in a house for years, thinking you knew every room, every corner, every hidden space, only to discover there was an entire floor you never knew existed? That's what learning about our relationship with the angelic realm feels like, except the house is your entire reality, and the hidden floor contains the very foundation upon which everything else rests. The discovery doesn't just add something new to your life, it recontextualizes everything you thought you understood about existence itself. I used to live with such a profound sense of separation, carrying the weight of believing that I was navigating this complex human experience essentially alone. Even when surrounded by loving family and friends, there was always this underlying current of isolation, this sense that ultimately each of us is trapped within our own consciousness, struggling to make sense of a chaotic world that often seems indifferent to our deepest needs and highest aspirations. Perhaps you felt this too, that existential loneliness that no amount of human connection seems to fully heal, that persistent question of whether we matter in any cosmic sense, or if we're just random accidents in an uncaring universe. Edgar's revelations about our relationship with angelic beings has shattered this illusion of separation so completely that I sometimes struggle to remember how dark and heavy that old worldview felt. To understand that we are literally never alone, that every human being exists within a web of conscious love and support that extends from our personal guardian angels all the way up through vast hierarchies of divine beings, fundamentally changes how you move through each day, how you interpret challenges, how you understand your purpose and potential. But this transformation hasn't been without its struggles, and I want to be honest with you about that because I suspect you might be experiencing some of the same internal conflicts that arose for me as these truths began to take root in my consciousness. There's a grief that comes with recognizing how much time you spent believing you were abandoned, how much energy you wasted trying to control outcomes that were already being orchestrated by intelligence far greater than your own, how much suffering you endured thinking you had to figure everything out by yourself. I went through a period where I felt almost angry at this newfound awareness, frustrated that no one had taught me about this reality when I was younger, when I desperately needed to know that I was held and guided and loved beyond measure. Why had I been allowed to believe I was so alone? Why hadn't someone told me that the universe was conspiring not against me, but for me, that every apparent setback was actually a redirection towards something better than I could have imagined for myself? But gradually, I began to understand that perhaps I needed to experience that sense of separation in order to fully appreciate the magnitude of connection that was always present. Maybe the journey from feeling abandoned to recognizing divine companionship is itself a crucial part of our spiritual evolution, a necessary contrast that allows us to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be human while simultaneously being held by forces beyond the physical realm. Edgar's teachings helped me see that this awakening to angelic presence isn't meant to make us passive recipients of divine intervention, but rather conscious collaborators in the ongoing creation of reality. When you know that you're supported by beings whose love is absolute and whose wisdom encompasses perspectives you can't even imagine, you begin to relax into a different way of being in the world. Instead of frantically trying to force outcomes through sheer willpower, you learn to listen for guidance, to follow synchronicities, to trust in timing that might not make sense to your limited human understanding, but serves a larger purpose that's always unfolding perfectly. This shift from forcing to flowing, from controlling to collaborating, has been one of the most challenging and liberating aspects of learning to bridge the visible and invisible realms. Our culture teaches us that we must be completely self-reliant, that asking for help is weakness, that success comes only through individual effort and determination. But living in conscious relationship with the angelic realm requires a different kind of strength, the strength to surrender, to trust, to allow ourselves to be guided by intelligence that operates beyond our comprehension. I remember the first time I consciously asked my guardian angel for guidance about a difficult decision I was facing. Part of me felt foolish, talking to beings I couldn't see, hoping for signs that might never come. But within hours, the guidance began flowing in ways that were undeniably clear and precisely relevant to my situation. A conversation with a stranger that contained exactly the insight I needed. A book recommendation that led me to information that completely shifted my perspective. A sudden knowing in my heart about which path would serve my highest good. What amazed me wasn't just that the guidance came, but how perfectly it was tailored to my personality, my learning style, my current level of spiritual development. The angels didn't overwhelm me with cosmic downloads or mystical visions that would have frightened or confused me. They spoke my language, used references I would understand, created circumstances that felt natural and comfortable while still being clearly beyond coincidence. This experience taught me that bridging the visible and invisible realms isn't about developing psychic abilities or having dramatic supernatural encounters, though those certainly can be part of the journey for some people. For most of us, it's about developing sensitivity to the subtle ways divine intelligence is already communicating with us, learning to recognize the difference between our ego's voice and the voice of wisdom, becoming willing to act on guidance, even when we can't see the full picture of where it's leading us. Edgar's revelations also helped me understand that our awareness of angelic presence serves a purpose beyond our personal healing and growth. Every human being who awakens to this reality becomes a bridge themselves, a conduit through which the love and wisdom of the invisible realm can flow more freely into the physical world. We become conscious participants in the great work of raising human consciousness, of healing the illusion of separation that has caused so much suffering on our planet. This understanding has given my life a sense of purpose and meaning that I never experienced before. Instead of seeing myself as just one person trying to make it through each day with some measure of happiness and success, I now understand that my life is part of a vast tapestry of awakening, that every choice I make to align with love rather than fear, every moment I choose trust over control, every time I act from compassion rather than judgment, sends ripples through both the visible and invisible worlds in ways that can heal and transform far beyond what I can personally see. But perhaps what moves me most deeply about Edgar's teachings is how they reveal that this relationship with the angelic realm isn't reserved for specially chosen individuals or those who have achieved some elevated spiritual status. It's the birthright of every human soul, available to anyone who's willing to open their heart to the possibility that they are infinitely more loved and supported than they ever dared to believe. You don't need to be perfect or pure or enlightened to begin bridging these realms in your own life. You don't need to have dramatic spiritual experiences or possess unusual psychic gifts. You don't need to change your religion or abandon your rational mind or become someone entirely different than who you are right now. You simply need to be willing to consider that there might be more happening around you than what your physical senses perceive, more intelligence at work in your life than what your logical mind can explain, more love holding you than what your wounded heart has been able to accept. This willingness creates an opening, a crack in the wall of separation that allows divine light to begin streaming into your daily experience. And once that light begins to flow, once you start recognizing the signs and synchronicities and gentle guidance that have always been present, once you begin to feel the profound love and support that surrounds you at every moment, there's no going back to the old way of living. The bridge has been built, and you find yourself naturally moving back and forth between realms, equally at home in the world of form and the world of spirit. The implications of this way of living extend far beyond personal transformation, though that transformation is profound and ongoing. When you know that you're supported by beings whose love is unconditional and whose wisdom encompasses perspectives you can't imagine, you begin to treat yourself with more compassion, to trust your own intuition more deeply, to take risks that serve your soul's evolution even when they don't make sense to your fearful mind. But more than that, you begin to see others differently too. When you recognize the divine support system that that surrounds every human being, you can't help but treat each person you encounter with greater reverence and kindness. You begin to see past their defensive behaviors to the frightened soul beneath who simply hasn't yet remembered how loved they are. You become more patient with those who are still struggling with the illusion of separation, because you remember how painful and confusing that illusion can be. This shift in perception naturally leads to more compassionate action, more loving choices, more willingness to serve something greater than your own immediate needs and desires. You become part of the solution rather than part of the problem, a healing presence rather than a wounded one, a bridge of love connecting heaven and earth rather than just another person struggling to survive in a harsh and indifferent world. As I share these reflections with you, I'm aware that you might be feeling a mixture of hope and skepticism, longing and doubt, recognition and resistance. All of these responses are natural and sacred. The journey of awakening to angelic presence isn't always comfortable or easy. It challenges everything we've been taught about the nature of reality, asks us to trust in love when our experience has taught us to expect disappointment, invites us to surrender control when everything in our conditioning tells us that's dangerous. But I want you to know that every step of this journey is held and supported by beings whose love for you is so vast and unconditional that it can heal even the deepest wounds, transform even the most painful patterns, and guide you into a life more beautiful and meaningful than anything you've dared to dream possible. The bridge between worlds isn't something you need to build. It's something that's always existed, waiting patiently for you to notice it, to step onto it, to trust it to hold you as you move between the realm of fear and the realm of love. If these words are stirring something deep within your soul, if they're awakening a remembrance of divine connection that your heart has never stopped believing in even when your mind lost faith, I invite you to join our growing family of souls who are learning to live consciously connected to the angelic realm. By subscribing to this channel, you're not just accessing information about spiritual truth, you're declaring your readiness to step fully onto that bridge between worlds, and your presence here creates permission for others to take their own courageous steps into the love that's been waiting to embrace them all along.